Right now, as I speak, the largest U.S. military deployment in the Caribbean since 2019 is underway. 3 Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers, over 4,000 Marines, and an amphibious assault group are converging on Venezuelan waters. The official story? Fighting drug cartels? The reality? A calculated imperial strategy to control oil, crush sovereignty, and reassert American dominance over what they still consider their backyard. This isn't just about Venezuela. It's about the future of an entire continent. On August 20th, 2025, 3 U.S. Navy destroyers arrived in the southern Caribbean: the USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham, and USS Sampson. These aren't patrol boats. They're floating arsenals equipped with the Aegis combat system, carrying between 90 and 96 missiles each, including Tomahawk cruise missiles with a range exceeding 1,600 kilometers. But that's just the beginning. The Pentagon has also deployed the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group, force capable of landing 4,000 Marines from the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit anywhere along the South American coast within hours. These ships carry everything from armored amphibious vehicles to Harrier attack jets and CH-253 heavy-lift helicopters. This is the same type of force structure the U.S. used before invading Iraq in 2003 and Libya in 2011. When America deploys amphibious assault ships with precision strike capabilities, they're not planning deterrence. They're preparing for regime change. The official narrative speaks of combating narco-terrorism. But let's examine where these ships are positioned: directly along Venezuela's main oil export routes. The same waters where Venezuelan forces conduct their annual Bolivarian shield exercises, simulating defense against foreign invasion. To understand this escalation, we need to talk about oil specifically. The 11 billion barrels of oil equivalent discovered in the Essequibo region. This territory, currently administered by Guyana, but claimed by Venezuela since the 19th century, has become the crown jewel of ExxonMobil's global operations. Since 2015, when these massive reserves were discovered, Guyana has experienced the world's fastest economic growth, 62.3% in 2023 alone, according to the World Bank. By 2027, Guyana's oil production is expected to reach 1.3 million barrels per day. But here's the problem. This is disputed territory. Venezuela has maintained its claim to Essequibo for over 125 years, long before Chavez, long before Maduro. The dispute remains under international arbitration, yet Guyana continues granting concessions to American companies. Secretary of State Marco Rubio made the connection explicit when announcing the military deployment, stating it would protect companies operating legally in Essequibo territory, a direct reference to ExxonMobil. This isn't diplomacy. It's corporate muscle disguised as national security. The timing is no coincidence. In recent weeks, Guyana announced new exploration licenses for American and British companies in the eastern maritime zones under dispute, while ExxonMobil expanded its drilling operations closer to Venezuelan territorial waters. This military deployment is the latest escalation in a decade-long strategy of economic strangulation. Since 2017, the U.S. Treasury has frozen over $7 billion in Venezuelan state oil company PDVSA assets and prohibited foreign companies from conducting financial operations with Venezuela's state enterprises. The results have been devastating. Venezuelan oil production collapsed from 3.2 million barrels per day in 2013 to less than 750,000 by 2020, resulting in over $100 billion in lost national revenue and triggering a profound economic crisis. But here's the insidious part. By labeling this a counter-narco-terrorism operation, the U.S. bypasses the need for a congressional declaration of war. The recent designation of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua as a global terrorist organization provides legal cover for military action against Venezuelan state infrastructure under the pretext of fighting terrorism. They've even doubled the bounty on President Maduro to $25 million, treating the legitimately elected president of a sovereign nation like a common criminal. Before we examine the military infrastructure being deployed, we need to address the breathtaking hypocrisy of the United States. Using counter-narco-terrorism as justification for this military escalation, this is the same country that has one of the most documented histories of collaboration with drug traffickers in modern history. Let's start with the most infamous example, the Iran-Contra affair of the 1980s. While publicly waging a war on drugs, The CIA was simultaneously collaborating with drug traffickers bringing cocaine and marijuana into the United States, using its share of the profits to finance the Contra rebels attempting to overthrow Nicaragua's leftist, Sandinista government. By December 1985, Associated Press was reporting that 3 Contra groups engaged in cocaine trafficking, in part to help finance their war against Nicaragua. The classified U.S. government documents demonstrate official knowledge of Contra drug operations and collaboration with and protection of known drug traffickers. In August 1987, the chief of the CIA's Central American Task Force testified before the Iran-Contra Committee of Congress that drug smuggling by the Southern Front Contras was more significant than previously reported, stating, "With respect to drug trafficking by the resistance forces, it is not a couple of people. It is a lot of people." This wasn't rogue agents operating without authorization. This was official U.S. policy. The Reagan administration knowingly turned America's streets into a marketplace for cocaine to fund their illegal war in Nicaragua. The hypocrisy extends to Colombia, where the U.S. has maintained a complex relationship with drug cartels for decades. Federal investigators determined that CIA funding actually benefited an arm of Colombia's Medellin cartel, headed by fugitive trafficker Pablo Escobar. In 1992, the CIA provided high-tech armaments to paramilitary groups in exchange for fighting drug lord Pablo Escobar, essentially arming one set of criminals to fight another while both were involved in the drug trade. This pattern of collaboration with drug traffickers isn't an aberration. It's standard operating procedure when it serves us geopolitical interests. From the Golden Triangle in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War to Afghanistan's opium trade during the occupation, the U.S. has repeatedly partnered with drug traffickers when convenient. Now, suddenly, the same U.S. government that spent decades as the world's most documented collaborator with drug cartels claims moral authority to launch military operations against Venezuela over narco-terrorism. The designation of Tren de Aragua as a global terrorist organization provides legal cover for what is essentially a regime change operation disguised as law enforcement. The cynicism is staggering. The country that flooded its own streets with cocaine to fund illegal wars now positions itself as the hemisphere's anti-drug crusader. Using this manufactured narrative to justify military aggression against a sovereign nation, the U.S. Southern Command budget has more than doubled from $890 million in 2018 to $1.73 billion in 2024. With 63% dedicated to base modernization and amphibious capabilities, key installations have been upgraded. The Curacao base now operates MQ-9 drones and E-2D Hawkeye early warning aircraft. Colombia's Palenquero base can now accommodate C-17 Globemaster cargo planes carrying 80 tons of equipment. Aruba serves as a forward operating base for naval interdiction operations. This infrastructure gives the U.S. the capability to rapidly deploy heavy equipment and thousands of troops. Anywhere in northern South America, between 2018 and 2024, the U.S. conducted 17 joint military operations in the Caribbean, with Colombian, Dutch, Brazilian, Undertenmer, and Bolsonaro, British, and Canadian forces. This network of military partnerships creates the foundation for a multilateral intervention force. Considering this context, there is a few scenarios to deep understand. The first scenario involves boarding Venezuelan vessels in international waters under anti-drug pretenses. This was tested in February 2024, when the U.S. Coast Guard attempted to intercept a Venezuelan tanker near Aruba, backing down only when a Venezuelan corvette approached. The second scenario is a partial naval blockade designed to strangle Venezuela's oil exports and force the government into negotiations under extreme pressure. The positioning of the Iwo Jima group suggests Washington is at least preparing for this possibility. The third and most dangerous scenario combines precision strikes, special forces operations, and air-naval blockade, similar to what the U.S. did in Panama in 1989. The presence of Marines with rapid deployment capabilities indicates this option remains on the table. A major offensive like this quickly generated regional implications. Significantly, Colombian President Gustavo Petro has broken with decades of Colombian-U.S. military cooperation, declaring that any military intervention against Venezuela would threaten regional peace and could destabilize the entire continent. Petro has called for an emergency summit of Latin American foreign ministers to establish a common position against U.S. interventionism. A remarkable shift from a country that was Washington's primary regional ally for decades. Brazil's response has been troublingly muted till this moment. Despite sharing a 2,200-kilometer border with Venezuela and facing the prospect of 250,000 to 300,000 refugees in case of conflict, the Lula government has remained silent about the U.S. military deployment. This is strategically short-sighted. Brazilian exports worth billions transit through Caribbean shipping lanes that would be disrupted by prolonged military operations. Energy integration projects between Brazil and Venezuela would be suspended, opening space for U.S. companies to fill the gap in the Amazon region. The humanitarian implications are staggering. The International Organization for Migration reports that 80,000 Venezuelans crossed into Brazil in 2023 alone. Military conflict could multiply this figure fivefold, overwhelming Brazil's border states' healthcare and social services. This isn't just about Venezuela. It's also about preventing Chinese and Russian influence in South America. China has become Venezuela's primary trading partner and creditor. While Russia provides military equipment and technical assistance, the message to Beijing and Moscow is clear. Any concrete support for Venezuela will be treated as a hemispheric security threat. This deployment is part of a broader U.S. strategy to reassert Monroe Doctrine hegemony in an era of great power competition. The timing coincides with efforts to weaken BRICS and undermine South American integration projects. Venezuela's exclusion from BRICS, partially due to Brazilian and other regional governments' reluctance to fully support Caracas, has weakened the bloc's presence in South America. Washington's strategy aims to fragment regional unity and pull South American countries back into the U.S. sphere of influence through a combination of economic pressure and military intimidation. President Petro reminded the region that between 1954 and 1989, the United States conducted 56 direct military interventions in Latin America and the Caribbean, all justified as defending democracy or regional security. Today's pretext is counter-narco-terrorism, but the pattern remains unchanged. Economic interests drive policy. Legal pretexts provide cover, and military force serves as the ultimate enforcer of imperial will. The stakes extend far beyond Venezuela. Control of the Orinoco oil reserves, the Essequibo petroleum, Caribbean logistics corridors, and the Amazon as an axis of regional integration and sovereignty are all in play. If the precedent of intervention against Venezuela is accepted, any Latin American country that refuses the logic of submission could become the next target. This is why defending Venezuelan sovereignty isn't just solidarity, it's continental self-defense. The only effective response is what President Petro has proposed: South American nations joining hands, setting aside disagreements, and building a cohesive bloc to reject U.S. imperial strategy. Brazil's current distance from Venezuela, refusing to recognize Maduro's electoral victory, and vetoing Venezuela's BRICS membership, only serves Washington's divide-and-conquer strategy. This is the moment for South American nations to demonstrate whether they will defend their collective sovereignty or allow themselves to be picked off one by one. The Brazilian government's silence, in particular, represents a dangerous abdication of regional leadership at a critical moment. The massive U.S. military deployment in the Caribbean represents more than a threat to Venezuela. It's an assault on the principle of South American self-determination. The destroyers and marines positioned in Venezuelan waters are the sharp edge of a broader, imperial project to reassert U.S. dominance over what they still consider their backyard. The choice facing South America is stark: unity in defense of sovereignty, or division leading to colonization. The outcome of this confrontation will determine whether Latin America can forge its own path of development, or will be forced back into subordination to imperial interests. The time for half measures and diplomatic niceties has passed. The future of an entire continent hangs in the balance. And don't forget, like the video and subscribe the channel. Thanks for watching.